Thank you very much for joining this call today. I really do appreciate it. It'll be fun to talk about what an ERP in 120 days is with my practice. So the goal is to really take a look at how we do BC Express packages and how you could be live on D365 BC in 120 days. So with that, I'm going to just get on here and we're going to go to the agenda. So I wanted to kind of frame this, what we're talking about, what you can do in 120 days. So first we're going to take a look at what a typical project would look like. We'll walk through the Velosio project methodology and how it relates to my team and the BC Express. We'll talk through client responsibilities because this project is very collaborative and the success depends on Velosio performing and the client performing and talking to each other and having great communication. I'll also show or talk about some of the tools we use in order to keep the projects on track, and then we'll leave some time for questions and answers if there is any. So let's take a look at what the project scope looks like. So first of all, what we do in this 120-day implementation is generally they are fixed fee implementations. So we can walk in and scope some work that says we will implement one company, and with that you're going to get general ledger, configuration and training, banking, receivables, payables, potentially fixed assets, sales order, purchase order, and basic inventory. And then we outline some scope around that, meaning that we say for banking, we assume it's one company, one bank account, and one bank account says one check, one ACH file, one positive pay file. And that's how we scale our fixed fee. When we go in with basic inventory, it excludes some things like assembly management, for example. It can be brought into scope, but in that 120-day plan, this is where we're starting, is with basic inventory. So we also have data migration included, but it's really the support for you to import your data. So data migration is a big deal, and it's important to get the right data into your new ERP. What we do is we teach you how to use the tools within Business Central to import your data. We can give you templates that have worked well for other customers. We have worksheets that document the fields that might be coming in and why you might use them. And if you're coming from one of the legacy Microsoft products such as SL or GP, we have SQL scripts that we can use to help you get your data out of your existing ERP and get it into a format that makes it easy to import into Business Central. We have user acceptance testing support. And again, where this is we've configured the company, we've showed your subject matter experts how to use it, got buy-in. And then what we do is after training happens, we coach you through user acceptance testing. And that's really allowing your team, your end users to touch the software, test their processes, test specific steps within their processes. We've done what we believe, we call it smoke testing. We go in and we walk through the processes. We believe it works. Your team is going to come in and do some more testing and find out where we just need to tweak and adjust things. And then at the go live time, we allow up to a week of support, and it's up to about 12 hours of support for that go live support. So you're configured, you're trained, you've tested, and then we go live. And then what that allows us that first week to get through the first invoices that you're going to bill, the first AP invoices or checks that you're going to cut, the first time you maybe do an inventory transaction. But we work through you with some of those critical processes to make sure that first week is not quite as startling to everybody as it sometimes can be with a new ERP. So with the training, we do document and outline a certain number of hours that we will do training, but we have something that's called a success workshop. And what that success workshop is getting your end users into the system and learning the basics of how to move around Business Central, because it's different from other ERPs, and it's different if you're coming off GP or SL. It operates differently. And if we get people into Business Central early, this is one of the first trainings we have, it encourages others to get in, touch, look, and really go into that test company as we're configuring and get comfortable with the new ERP. The data migration workshop, that's a workshop that says, here's how configuration packages work, and here's some best practices. We'll give you some samples, you'll try it. It's really interactive so that when we walk away from that workshop, your team or whoever's responsible for data migration feels like they can take the next steps. With user acceptance testing workshop, we go with your team and say, here are the scripts. We will provide a many scripts. I don't know how many lines we've got, but we've got some default testing scripts. We'll show your team how to test. So we'll walk through a script, show them how to document if it's failed, show them how to document if this test has completed. You can take our default scripts and modify them to your specific needs, or you can add new scripts because ours are generic and you will have specific things that you want your team members to test. And so you'd add your own. What this does is it gives us a graphical representation so that when we're in user acceptance testing, we can talk to the project team during a status meeting that says, okay, you've tested 62 different scripts. 2 have failed. We're working with you on these 2. How are you doing with the rest of the scripts? We can also start talking about, have you walked through that process flow? Have you done a procure to pay flow to make sure everyone knows how to find data from the beginning to the end? And then we'll have specific training sessions for the financials and distribution modules, and it will be specific to whomever you say has to be in GL training. So you'll be GL training, we'll have an agenda, and you invite the proper people to that training. Training is is recorded. It will be put up on a SharePoint site where you will have access to that information. And if we have hands-on guides or help documents that are part of our standard library, we'll provide that to you and your team that you can use as takeaways and for additional testing and training, and really when you get into that hands-on user acceptance testing. So that's how we scale that 120-day. That's what the scope could look like if it was the 120-day product. So I'm going to just focus up here on this little triangle. What happens here is that because we've laid out a scope and we're saying 120 days and we're defining what's in scope, what we're trying to do is make the fixed fee. Certainly, we want to make it something that fits within everyone's budget, and it gives them the training and the tools and the education and the product that they want, and also within that defined timeline, because then you can say, hey, we're going to start on date X, our go live is here, and everybody, both teams can be driving towards that go live date, and we don't have a whole lot of there's less confusion about when we're going live or what's included. So with the cost being fixed fee, we know what the cost is. The time, we would say that in the SOW or the statement of work, that it's 120 days. And then the scope would be part of, this is certainly scrunched down of what we've got in our statement of work, but it's really what is included in a standard project. But the scope would have a few more details of how much time is allowed. But it gives you the idea of you would be able to look at a statement of work and understand what you're going to get within that 120 days. So we do have a project methodology, and we call it the right path methodology. It is used by all of the practices within Velosio. We have, for the BC Express team, we have modified it a little bit because our projects are more rapid in nature, and sometimes to keep costs at a lower price point and to make sure we get done in 120 days, we eliminate a couple of documents that are sometimes necessary in a larger deployment. But when you look at our right path methodology, we have 6 different phases that we follow. And if you were to look at our project plan, the tasks and setup for a project would follow these different phases as well. So we start with the plan, and the plan is the project planning. That's where we look at your scope. We build we take our templated scope or our project plan and then adjust it for any uniquenesses within your project. And then we schedule a project kickoff, and that kickoff would be between our project team and your project team. And it would introduce whomever you invite to that project kickoff to the project, the timeline, the communication strategy, the team members. So you'd be introduced to our team, to your team. We'd set that preliminary, share with you that preliminary go live, make sure everyone's in agreement. And then also during that meeting, start setting up things as our initial meetings that come directly after plan. So once we move from plan, we move into analyze and design. And what that is our business process review. So Even if you went through the sales process and we know quite a bit about you already, the business process review allows the consulting team to get in and ask very specific and detailed questions about how you want your system configured and how you need Business Central to operate. Once we've had those meetings, we do a fit gap analysis. That's essentially a smart sheet or an Excel sheet that lists what we heard from the questions we asked and whether or not it's a fit or a gap. And if it's a fit, the consultants might put in some, then this is how we're going to configure. If it's a gap, we might make a recommendation of some minor development. It might be a third-party product that we want to consider, or it might be a conversation to say, is it still necessary? And or is it phase 2? Once we get agreement on that fit gap, then we move into data migration workshop. So that's the initial discussion with how are you going to get data into the system. And then we work on system configuration. So system configuration is our lead consultant going in and configuring a company in the way that we understood in the fit gap analysis. Once they've configured a section, they will call in your subject matter experts to say, okay, this is how we've configured it based off of what I understood. Let's walk through it. Does that make sense to your business? Is there anything that you would do differently? And when we listen to the differently, or it works or it doesn't work. And what we're doing in that session is driving the conversation of how are we going to train your end users? Because your subject matter experts are going to define, this is the flow that we need, this is the fields that we absolutely have to have an end user filling in, so that our lead consultant is then managing that, so that when we get into training, we're being very specific with your end users about how to use the system. So configuration is happening, and then data migration, we have that workshop. So your team learns how to import data, and then we move into, we will start guiding you through the next thing we need in is, and generally the first thing that we need imported, and we're going to help you get in that as fast as possible, is the chart of accounts and dimensions. And then after that, because there are things that take longer for people to think about, GL history is sometimes something to worry about and think about. And then sometimes if you have inventory and you have a lot of inventory, maybe if you're renaming your items or have serial and lot numbers, we start guiding you through getting things in as rapidly as possible and even as staging it, because getting that data in is it helps with the go live process if we have the data in a timely manner. So we're configuring, we're showing your team the design, you're working on data migration. So that means we're both working together in the system. In the develop section, this is where we would make sure that your AP check is printing properly, that an invoice, if you have a sales invoice or a purchase order, has got the logo. We do some minor adjustments to that. That's our standard scope, is just moving some fields around and putting on a logo and doing some minor adjustments. And then with financial statements, we create some very basic, two basic income statement or financial statements, one balance sheet and one income statement. And part of that is teaching you how to create more in those account schedules. But we are just creating a balance sheet and an income statement. Once we've got the system configured, we've got some data imported, we've got the reports working. So it's ready now at this point to do training. So your team has worked with us, your subject matter experts has worked with us. You have to want people trained to your end user, you have reports that work, you've got some sample data in the system. We go into end user training, and that's where we have those agendas, and we're recording our training so that you can get the right people in the room, they can have that training. If we have predefined documentation, your team will get it. And then once the training is done, the recording goes up onto a SharePoint site you have access to, the end users have training, and we roll you right into user acceptance testing. So at that point, it's fresh in everybody's mind, and then they can go in and start thinking about how will this apply to them. Generally, UAT is about 2 weeks of testing before we start the system cutover activities. And the system cutover activities is really your timing on getting your final data into the system, our timing on getting the final configuration adjustments. It could be a multitude of things. But after the training, the UAT starts, and then once UAT is done, that's when go live really starts rolling. So we have the system cutover activities, we move into that operate phase, and then we do the go live. And the go live is in the perfect world, the system cutover activities might start on a Thursday afternoon. And Friday would be spent from your team loading that final data, our team doing the final configurations, making sure everything in that live company is set up correctly, so that on Monday, your end users are now set up to say, okay, BC is our new ERP system. This is where you're going to do things. And what our team will do is not just go, woo, you're live, because we're remote. What we're going to do with you is say, okay, what's the most critical thing to help you through on Monday? And so that might be, we're going to do an AP check run or work with a specific person because they have to get sales invoices out. And so we'd work with you to help through that first week of go live support. And you'd be guiding us to what's most important and who we should be working with. Once that first week of go live is done, we generally do we move you to our support team. So you would be working with your account manager to get a support project in place, and your additional questions or anything further would go through the support portal, and then your project manager would work with you to do a project close. So that's our methodology, and I'm going to go ahead and just this next screen just sort of gives you a visual of what it would look like. So if you started in November, so if you had a kickoff meeting at the end of November, analyze and design would be November to December, December to January would be configure pilot, January, February-ish would be that deploy phase, and then we'd have an April at end of March or April go live. So that's really how we stage it. Are we sticklers to that 120 days do or die? Absolutely not. We have to work with the client, with you, with our team to make sure we stay within that range, because we have holidays to worry about, we have vacation, things happen in people's lives, and we want the projects to go live successfully. So I think I've said this, but I do want to say as part of this project and why it's effective and we can do it in 120 days is because our team has a path, and we're also looking at your team to have a path. And when I say a path, we need, in order for the project to be successful, we need things from your team. And so I'll just start at the top. And across the top is we do need a client project manager. And that project manager on your side needs to understand what the project plan and objectives are, and also understand what that go live date is, because they will be driving your team to make sure that they're getting their commitments done within the due dates so that we can continue to move forward collectively. We also ask that leadership, because the client project manager may not be a manager of a role, they may not be a C-level person, they are somebody who's good at project management, but they may not be the ultimate decision maker. So we're also looking for leadership to be continuously sharing with your team, why are we doing this new ERP? Why is it important to us? So you're doing that change management internally to support this transition. And then it's the working with your team to make sure that your end users and your subject matter experts understand how important their knowledge is, and their knowledge to be able to test and validate and make sure that what we're configuring meets the business needs, and to share with your project manager, with your leadership, and with us if it's not meeting and something needs to be adjusted. In the silos below, I've got responsibilities for each phase. So some of the big ones, project manager is the big one, and then we need your subject matter experts during the analyze and design to really understand what goes on in your business, and also be able to make a decision. If we uncover a gap and we offer some solutions, we're looking at your team to collaborate with ideas on what the solution can be, and then make a decision on whether or not it's going to be phase 2, or we're going to try and come up with a solution in phase 1. You do need to identify a data migration lead, because this person has to be on top of data and being able, because doing data the weekend before a go live hurts, and it can get complicated. So the more data we can load in advance of a go live, the better off we are. And having somebody who understands that process. And then we needed subject matter experts, and it could be 1 people, it could be 5 people, but we need somebody who says, I know how journal entries work and what I need to do, and I will test that. And then you need somebody who says, I know how sales order process goes, and so I'll test that process, and I'm gonna figure out the best, I'm gonna work through BC and work with the lead consultant to make sure we've got the smoothest process possible. During the develop phase, this is the one that often gets missed, is we will modify your AP check. So we'll shift those fields around and we'll say, looks pretty good to us. And then what we don't have is an actual check stock to print against. So we'll put that report into Business Central and we'll say, will you please print a check? And it's print that check as if you were sending it to your most critical or complicated vendors. We're talking about somebody who takes discounts or has got funny terms or whatever it is, but being able to print the check to the check stock will allow you then to say, I can send this. And I did put just AP check here, but consider too that if you've got an ACH file that you're sending as opposed to a check, or if you need to send a positive pay file, we want to get samples to the bank. We want to have the bank approve it so that we are not trying to modify a check or an ACH file during that go live week. So we're looking at your team to be able to test those processes. We're also looking at your team to be able to test your account schedules and reconcile against your legacy system. So that goes back to making sure you're getting data in this system so that we can prove that the data is coming in correctly. So then in that deploy phase is give people the time to attend the training and help them focus on what the purpose is, help us schedule the meetings for the duration that your team can handle. Because if we go out with a 3-hour meeting, which we probably wouldn't, you might come back and say, you know what, our focus is about an hour and a half. Well, then we have to accommodate that. We have to make sure that it's an hour and a half and we're very precise on our training. And that's what we need from you, is to make sure you've got the right people in the room and tell us what you need. We also need people to have a UAT champion. So somebody who's able to look at each of your process flows and being able to think about, if the script isn't already one of our standards, what else should you be testing? What else should I test? What else is important to me? So we need somebody who can really own that process. And then being able to make sure that somebody's updating that script list to make sure we're on track. And then that final one during that operate stage is, it will meet together to talk about what needs to be done, but we also need your team to be looking at that go live checklist or the task list and the plan, and making sure that you have the right people assigned and they know when they're supposed to be doing something, and they know when, if they're waiting for somebody else to do something, that they know that that has to happen. So everybody is working off of a plan that they can visually see and they get where they're part of the solution. And then if there's a challenge, if there's anything that you really want us to focus on, or it's where do you want us to support you that first week? We have ideas, but we also need your team to just chime in and make sure that our ideas match yours. So it's a great, I mean, it's a very collaborative project, and so our team has a flow of what we do, but we really success comes when the client side has a team members who are really invested in the solution. So I've said data migration. I've said that it is something that you really want to think about, plan for, and so and because this project is you're responsible for that data migration, and we have we have strategies. We would import the GL accounts, the dimensions, the customer addresses, and masters. So that chart on the right hand side, that's just what's normal, or what we've seen people do. But on the left hand side is things for you to start thinking about. Is, where is this data? And who can pull the data out of the legacy system? Do you need any other data? So when the templates we provide are there fields that are in BC that you want to populate that aren't in a template? And how do we have to adjust that? And what level of detail do you want to bring your data in? So some people, for GL history, they might bring in summary for the last 10 years, but then last year and this year, they'll bring in detail. You just have to be thinking about that, because it's a different load. The load is the same, but it's a different level of detail. It's a different reconciliation. In some cases, you might be changing your chart of accounts from one account number to another, and we have to think about how that data transformation will happen. And it could also happen with items or customers or vendors. But we just have to be careful to think about, you're going to have an old ID and it needs to go to a new ID, and somebody needs to be planning for that. It's also important to be thinking about what reports are we tying to. So you have to, if you're looking at an AP trial balance out of GP, know the parameters that you're running that for, because when you load open AP into Business Central, what report are we going to run in BC that will tie those two together? And can you reconcile it? Because when you go live, those cutover dates, it's, everybody's under the gun and trying to do things as rapidly as possible. You want to make sure you have you're fluid enough to say, this is what I got out of my legacy system, this is how I'm going to run it out of BC, and I understand how to reconcile. So it's the one other thing too is when are you going to do the cutover? Because you have to think about, when will my last transaction go into my legacy system? Because at that point, then you can start pulling all of the remaining data you need to import, and you just have to be really clear with your team that they are not making any more entries, or have a plan to track who's making entries. So data migration, big important deal, and lots of conversation, but it's a lot of effort, but an opportunity to bring in really valuable data into the new BC system and make some changes if you desire. So on the communication strategy, I brought this slide in because I wanted to make sure that what we have the 120 days, we will have hopefully either a weekly or bi-weekly status review meeting. And what that is we get your project manager, your lead, and you in this meeting, and we walk through the project plan, we look at high action items, we look at high issues, and we make sure that we are on track and can make some decisions if we need to in that meeting. Your project manager will also give you a weekly status report. And so that weekly status report will again recap, where are we on the project? Is the project green, red, or yellow, depending on the stage, and list out the high issues. So that's posted, that's sent to you, that's posted on the SharePoint site. So at any point, anybody who wasn't able to attend the status meeting could pull down that report and take a look at it and see how the project's health was. We'll also do an internal meeting. So our internal team will also get together and make sure that we have our reporting updated and we're on track, so that we can make sure that when we go to the external meeting, we're able to articulate the success of the project. And then finally, there is an escalation point. So in the event that something starts to tip over to the wrong side, the project manager has a PMO leader, and the project team could come to me. So if there was a problem, I'm always able to be, you can always talk to me, you can always call me, you can always escalate to me. The project managers and the lead consultants have no fear of bringing me in to talk to them about the project, talk to you about the project, so that we can work through whatever the challenge is. And sometimes escalation is doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's like, oh my goodness, something became urgent, and that's, it got escalated. So I just need to help something happen. But they have paths. It's not an island. We use tools such as Smartsheet, and SharePoint and Teams. So Smartsheet is where most of our project documents are. So we have a templated project plan. It can track the financial management of the process. It could list risks, issues, contact list, and other project artifacts that might need to be out there. So it's your go-to place. You would have access to those worksheets. You'd be able to update things like the risk and issues log, the contact list. That's where the user acceptance testing scripts are. So you would have access to that. You'd be able to update that. It's a collaboration tool. And then we create a SharePoint site for each customer. And the project manager will direct you to that site, give your users access into that's where we post signed documents. So that's where you'd see your signed SOW and any change orders that might come along. It's where our team would put training documentation if it was specific to you. It's where we're going to put our training recordings. So if it's project related, our team is putting that up there, which means your team at any point can go up there and pull that down. The site doesn't go away when the project is complete. The site still stays there, so you'd be able to go in and get that information or those recordings or those documents at a later date. And then the majority of our time is done through the Teams meetings or a screen share. So what that means is we could be on the phone just with a Teams phone call, or we could be doing a screen share where you're sharing with us or we are sharing with you, depending on what's the most appropriate mode of communication at that time. So we try and keep it as straightforward as far as those tools, so people don't have to learn a whole bunch more. Smartsheet is Excel-like, and generally people feel comfortable with the SharePoint as well as is a great document storage place for us. And most people are comfortable with that. But your project manager and your project team will take some time if you are not familiar with these tools, to walk you through how to use them and how you can make an update so that you are part of the solution.